talk about some roofs. Probably should have picked a better day to do this, considering it's like 100 degrees out here, but hey, we're on a roof, it's summertime, let's go. So this roof video right here, I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to do a really quick roofing 101, and I'm going to dive right into what to look for, you know, when you pull up to a property. And by no means does this replace a home inspection. So please don't misinterpret this video. This does not replace a home inspection. Please have a professional check out the roof if you're looking at a home. But if you just roll up to a property and you just want to do a quick inspection yourself, kind of what to look for. And how do I know these things? Well, because I worked for a roofing company. So this is what we did when we would go to homes. I'm going to show you what we look for in a roof when we're inspecting, just so you have a quick idea. And honestly, most of the stuff you're going to be able to see from ground level. So I'm up here on the roof. I'm going to show you up close, but you don't need to get on the roof, and I highly advise don't get on the roof. You can see a lot of things with an iPhone. Zoom in. Zooms are amazing with today's technology. So really quick, I'll do the roofing 101, and then we'll dive into the inspection part as far as what to look for. All right, let's talk about some components to the roof, right? Because it's not just shingles. There's a lot of components that go into a roof, you know, which can make a high quality roof versus a low quality roof. So just to give you a quick rundown, this here is drip edge, okay? So this is gonna run all along your Eave edges, and I'll explain what all the edges are and stuff in a moment. I'm just gonna run all along your eaves. So this is what's gonna attach to your decking, and the water is gonna run off into the gutter. So the problem with this is they have different quality, right? So this is an F3. You can see how small it is. It's very flimsy. You know, I advise you go up to an F8, right? So the F8 is going to be much thicker, and it's also going to cup the water better and drive it into the gutter. So it's not going to go up and under and cause ice dams and different things like this. And plus the F8 is going to go 6 inches up, which is going to be more points of contact, you know, for high winds and different things like that. Another component is flashing. So with flashing, just feel how flimsy this is, okay? You want to make sure, flashing, you want to use an upgraded piece, okay? This is a lot thicker, it's going to last a lot longer. And also how you put these things down makes a big difference. If you use a rubberized compound, well, think about it. Rubber in the summer, in the winter, in New England, you know, it's going to expand, it's going to contract, it's just going to do a lot of crazy things with the weather. And it's going to cause that rubber to crack, especially with the heat, like a day like today, when it's pounding on it. Over time, rubber cracks, and then water can get underneath the flashing. Also, take a look at your pipe boots. You know, a lot of pipe boots, how they used to do them, they were made out of rubber. So again, what happens with the rubber? It dry rots, it cracks over time, and that's where you're going to find a lot of leaks, you know, in your home. You know, you want to use something like neoprene. This neoprene is what they use in submarine hatches and wetsuits, and water's not getting through this. So, you know, when you're looking at all your pipe boots, definitely look at something with some neoprene versus rubber. All right, another thing to know about roofs is the ridge vent, right? You know, the cheapest option is this Cobra vent here. You can see the rolls of it in Home Depot. And the ridge is right here behind me. Get my angle right. I'll show you that up close. You know, but this has a ridge vent. It's like a plastic ridge vent, which is definitely an upgrade over this. But the old roofs from the 80s, a lot of them had this Cobra vent, which, you know, you try to breathe through it. I'm not getting any air, so it's not ventilating the roof properly. So you definitely want to have some ventilation, because the air is supposed to come in through your Sofit vents, circulate in your attic, and then it needs somewhere to go. If you don't have proper ventilation at your ridge, the hot air is just going to sit up there, and it's just going to bake that wood from the inside, and your attic is going to be prone to premature damage on your wood. So I'm going to go show you the ridge vent up close to one on this roof. They also have, if I can show you here, this one here, it's going to have, you know, thousands of holes. It's got tinsel steel, corrugated plastic. This is a high quality ridge vent. This one here, not as good. It's all plastic. You don't see the metal tinsel steel that are going to hold those holes from opening once you put the ridge cap shingles on top. But still, both versions better than that Cobra vent, you know, because that doesn't do a lot for you. And that Cobra vent, you know, dust, pollen, dirt, clog it up really quick, and then you need to get it replaced. All right, let's take a little quick tour on the roof. because I want to dive into the inspection. All right, so here's the ridge vent on this roof, you know, and as you can see, it is definitely helping the attic breathe, you know, but it's all plastic. So if I were to really stomp on that, you know, you could definitely cause some damage to the vent itself. But, you know, it goes across the whole ridge, and it's just going to help that attic properly ventilate. All right, let's walk over here, and this is where we see a lot of leaks. So these are vulnerable areas. Anywhere they cut a hole in the roof, and this is what you want to inspect from ground level when we get to that, is you want to zoom in on all these. So this is your pipe boot, like I was talking about. You got some rubber down there. This is the vent for the bathroom, and that's a common place. Skylights are the worst as far as leaks. Probably the #1 component to a roof that you see leaks from. So those are the areas you're going to want to zoom in at. I'm just going to show you because I'm up here, but that's all I want to show you with that. There's not a lot on this roof, but I just want to show you those things. All right, this is another vulnerable area on the roof. You know, that's the flashing at the chimney. You can see this one's in decent shape, but that's where you start to see it pull away. You'll see water to get in behind it, and then it starts leaking into the home. So that's a very common area that we see leaks on. All right, so some things to look for. If you're up on the roof, which I don't advise you go on the roof, but when we're inspecting, if we do go on the roof, you know, that's something obviously we look for. That's a ripped shingle, and you can see the piece is actually still here on the roof. So obviously that's some damage that needs to be addressed. It's just going to lead to further problems down the road. So some other things to look at on the roof, you know, is growth. So you can see some growth, and you can see all this from ground level, and you know, that's just going to eat the shingle. It's going to cause granular loss, which we'll get into. You see a lot of black streaks when you start having growth and different things on your roof. All right, just so you know a little bit about vocabulary, over here is going to be your rake edge on the outside, on the gable ends, and then along the sides that run into the gutters, those are your eave edges. So, all right, so we'll hop off the roof. Just want to show you a few quick things up here, and we'll dive into the inspection stuff. All right, so I'm at Home Depot. Let me just show you a few things real quick here, and then we'll dive into the inspections, because I know that's what you're waiting for. So there's two things here I want to show you. One, ice and water shield, and the other thing is the underlayment. Let's start with the ice and water shield. All right, so luckily one of the boxes was open, so I'm actually able to show it to you. But this is what it looks like. So this is ice and water shield. You can just see the quality of this, right? And it's got a, you know, it's got a sticky adhesive backing. That's going to stick right to the decking. And essentially it's going to be, you know, watertight once this is on there. So just imagine tearing all the shingles off, you know, stripping everything off, and you're left with the bare decking. This is going to be one of the first layers that goes on. So this is, for code, it's 2 feet from the eave edges inside the hot wall. So 2 feet into the hot wall. So go all along the edges of your house where ice dams would form, you know, where the water goes into the gutters. It will also go, you know, in your valleys or next to any vulnerable areas in your home. And it's just to protect it from moisture getting in, okay? But what you don't want to do is you don't want to cover your whole home in it, because it's just going to suffocate the wood. So you don't want this going everywhere, but you definitely want it along, you know, your eave edges and any vulnerable areas, because it's going to prevent ice dams from forming and different things like that. And what's going to go on the rest of the decking that doesn't have the ice and water shield, there's going to be some kind of underlayment. So there's all different kinds. There's synthetic ones. You know, there's definitely a wide range of quality. This is not good quality if you just use the roofing paper, because this is going to do nothing for moisture barrier. Because think about it, you know, you throw that in some water, it's almost like construction paper. It's just going to disintegrate. But the point of this is, you know, asphalt shingles, when they get hot, you know, they melt and they want to adhere to something. So if you don't have this down or this, they're just going to adhere right to the decking, and that's not good, because when you go to remove, you know, the roof and put a new roof on, if all the asphalt shingles have adhered to the decking, then, you know, you're going to destroy your decking trying to get that off. So that's the point of this. It's just a barrier so the asphalt shingles melt to this, and it will stick to this. Makes it a lot easier for removal. But obviously an upgrade if you want to get into more weather protection is to look at a synthetic underlayment. But we're not building a roof, we're just talking about roofs. So let's dive into the inspection part of it. All right, now that you know what the components are on a roof, now you're in a better position to know what to look at when you're inspecting the roof. So one thing you want to look at is you just want to look at the eave edges. And along the eave edges, you should see some soffit vents. And this home does not have any soffit vents. And it's not the end of the world, it's just the way they made them back then and designed them. But ideally, you'd like to see soffit vents up here, on the eaves. And that's where the air will flow into the attic. And that's where you create the circulation from, where it flows in through the soffit vents and then out through the ridge, which we showed you when we were on top of the home. So this here is a gable vent. And if you look on the gable side of the home, so you can see, so this is the two rake edges and this is the gable end. And then they have other styles of roof where you have, hips, where this side would actually be coming down and you'd see roof. And I'll show you a picture of one of those. So here is what a hip style roof looks like. And you can immediately see the difference just looking at the ridge, how small the ridge is. Whereas the gable style home that we were just looking at, the ridge goes across the entire length of the home. Right here, the ridge is greatly reduced because, you have, 4 different sides that are angled, towards the ridge, creating the hips. So, what this means for you when you see a home like this, this is just a style preference. But the hip is obviously going to have more square footage. So if you're looking at a home that is going to need a roof at some point, just keep in mind, that's going to be factored into the cost of the roof. All the different cuts, number of facets, they all make a difference, which I'll get into later. But I just wanted to show you real quick the difference between a hip roof and a gable style roof. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you drive up to a new property that you're looking at, is look at the roof. So as you're pulling down the driveway, you can already start to take a look at the overall look of the roof and just already start to get a feel for it. So, some common things you might see is some black streaks. So like on this roof here, you see some black streaks. And that's usually called by Gliocapsa, which is an airborne algae that attaches to the shingles themselves and starts to eat away at the shingle. It attaches to the limestones and it causes granule loss. So it will destroy the granules and you will experience granule loss, and that's what causes these black streaks. So you have no stone protection in these areas, and a common misconception is that you can just come and just wash this off and it's just going to come off. No, this is granule loss. So there's no coming back from this. Once this happens to your roof, it's just an uphill battle from there. So, if you see a roof that has a lot of black streaks on it, that is a big telltale sign that the roof, eventually is going to need to be replaced. The other thing I wanted to mention with this particular roof is the style of the roof. So this is what we call 3-tab. So you can just see the layout. It's almost like bricks and it's very flat. And this right now is not even in code if you were to put a new roof on. You can't even use 3-tab anymore, on your home. You got to go with the more architectural style look, which you'll see a lot of pictures with that, coming up. And obviously you want to find out how old the roof is, because that is going to be a huge determining factor. If your roof is 20 plus years old, you're at the end of the lifespan. I know that's probably common sense to everybody watching this video, but it's true. The shingles, baking in the sun for all those years, especially in New England or even down in Florida, those shingles take a beating. So, they start to become brittle, they break easy, and, you'll start to see a lot of different issues where you can start getting, water penetration into your home. So we're going to start with the most obvious stuff. So obviously you drive up to home and you see this, missing shingles. That's a huge red flag that you're going to need a new roof, pretty much immediately. Especially if you're going to want to get any kind of homeowner's insurance to cover your home. Another thing you want to take a look at is growth. So if you're seeing a lot of growth on your shingles, obviously that's a bad sign. Now, a lot of this stuff's common sense, but, so what happens with growth, though, is it's going to do a few things. One, they're going to deteriorate the shingles over time. And also, growth is going to withhold moisture. So the moisture is going to stay on your shingle. And one place you don't want to see moisture retention is on your roof, because eventually that's going to penetrate into your home, and then you're going to be getting moisture, into your decking, into your wood, and eventually into your home. And there's all different types of algae and bacteria, that can grow on your shingles. One thing, I wouldn't recommend, is to wash it off, Some people may say, oh, you can just wash this stuff off. Like I said, with the black streaks earlier, with the gliocasamagma and the granular loss, that's not coming off. Some of this will come off, but I caution very highly against, washing your roof, especially if you use any kind of pressure. They have different systems where they just have like a soapy substance that sits up there that kills it. That's a little better, but obviously, anytime you're washing your roof or doing anything like that, you're at risk of granular loss, and, the stones that are on your roof, the granules, that's what is your first layer of protection. So you want to keep those on there for as long as you can. I wouldn't recommend, using any type of wash to wash these things off. Another thing you want to take a look at is lifted shingles. So you can see right here in this picture, if you just look in the middle and even on the corner there, you can see lifted shingles. Now, there are a lot of reasons, that could cause this. So I'm not going to get into every single one. Obviously, weather is going to be one. The age of the shingle. If they didn't nail down the shingle properly, on the nailing strip, that's going to not adhere as well. Also, we haven't even gotten to the decking in the attic yet. So when we get to that point, we could talk a little bit more about it. But if that wood on your decking in your attic or under your roof, same decking, gets moist at all, because it's overheating or just moisture's getting in there, it almost acts like a lubricant to the nails, and you can get nail pops. The pressure in the attic can also lead to that too. But once that wood gets a little moist, a little lubricated, boom, the nail can pop out, with heavy winds and different things like that. But like I said, I'm not going to dive into every reason. And once those shingles are lifted, now you have an area on your roof that, water and moisture can get underneath the shingle, especially during like wind-driven rain. And then also, there's not much holding that shingle on. So obviously they're not very secure. So, they're going to lift that first, and then it's just a matter of time with some winds before that shingle, is torn off the roof completely, and now you have missing shingles. But that's one big thing you want to look at. So you're looking at this roof here, pretty easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. And, just look at the roof. Something doesn't look right. Something looks like it's popping up. That's a lifted shingle right there. Here's another roof here, another example. You can see the lifted shingle up there in the middle. This roof here, you can see it right away. It's right above the gutter, right along the eave edge. On this roof here, you can see all along with the roof meets the siding, you can see some lifted shingles. And this whole section of the roof should be sealed up really good with flashing. And speaking of flashing, let's take a look at some chimney flashing. So, you can just look here and you can already tell, there's some issues with this flashing. But to the other point, I want to bring back the other photo and just show you, this is just zooming in with an iPhone from ground level, not even on a ladder. So just to reiterate, you don't need to get up on the roof. It can be very unsafe up there. Just to share one story with you, I just remember talking to a homeowner one time, and he was telling me how he had his landscaper go up to the roof because it was leaking to look around. And what did he end up doing? He ended up falling through the roof. So it was an area that was, not that great of a decking. And, he fell through. So, just going up there to do an inspection and then you end up causing a lot more damage. that's not a good day right there. So, you can see a lot from ground level. You can see flashing, you can see all these different things, just zooming in from the ground. And this chimney flashing up here is actually in pretty good shape. But one cool thing about this one is you can just see where the lead from the chimney flashing, actually saved some of the roof. So it kind of protected the granules underneath. You can see the original color, of the shingles right underneath that. And that was just by, the lead from the chimney just helping to, kill any, growth or anything like that. So it kept all the granules and kept the original color. And here's an example of a chimney flashing that's in really rough shape. So you can just see even this roof, you go all the way across, you see, flex seal over here where it meets the siding. And then you just see a lot of flex seal, right around the chimney and right on the shingles in front of the chimney. So anytime you see black around the chimney or like that extra black color on some shingles like you see here, that's just signs that, a repair has been made. They probably use some flex seal or some kind of roofing sealant just to cover up a leak. So odds are there was probably a leak at some point when you see this type of thing, up near the chimney or on the roof and in any location. Another thing you want to look for in the flashing around the chimney is you want to look to see if it's starting to separate or pull apart. Like in this photo here, you can see along the bottom that it's starting to separate. And another area that you'll commonly see it is along the top edges of the flashing. So once you see those areas where it's separating or pulling apart, that's just a big open area, inviting moisture to get inside the home. So that's what you want to look at with the flashing. And that doesn't just go for chimney flashing. That's pretty much any flashing on the roof. So any area that will have flashing, like pipe boots or where the facet, meets the siding, you want to look for areas of the flashing pulling apart and, leaving vulnerable areas to get moisture into the home. So another example, how you can just zoom in from ground level and just see how up close you can see, there's the pipe boot, see a roof vent, you see a little patch behind it. You can come over here, you can see the flashing on the chimney. All this is with an iPhone at ground level. So anything protruding through the roof, is a vulnerable area. So those are what you really want to inspect. You want to inspect, where it attaches to the roof, how it was sealed, how it was flashed. Does it look like it's still, put together properly? Does it look like it's rotted, deteriorated, dry rotted? Did they use flex seal? Are they covering up a leak? This pipe boot here, you can tell was installed, after the fact. It's on top of the shingles. Typically, it should be underneath the shingles. And this one's in rough shape. I mean, you can see the pipe itself looks all rusted. And then the ceiling with the flashing, you can see all that dark black color, which, is a sealant of some sort, indicating, again, that it probably did leak in the past. Another area you want to inspect is the valleys. And the valley is where two facets of your roof come together, going in opposite directions, in the middle of your roof. So you want to look at how these joining areas, are holding up. You want to make sure there's no lifted shingles, that it's tight, because that's a vulnerable area in your roof that if moisture gets under there or water can get under there, it can definitely cause some serious leaking issues in your roof. And then take a look at this valley photo here. Just look above the valley up at the ridge. I mean, that ridge is in really rough shape. You can see it's really destroyed. So that's definitely another area you want to take a look at. That's the ridge, that goes across the top of your home. But there's an example. We've seen a lot of good ridges, but there's an example of, a very, very concerning ridge with the ridge cap shingles. Don't even seem like they're there. It seems like the ridge itself was destroyed. So circling back to our components that we studied at the beginning, you also want to take a peek at your drip edge. Just look along the edges on top of the gutter. This photo here also shows the leaf guard and the gutter guard. So when you're looking along the edges at the drip edge, you can also take a peek at the gutter guards and the leaf guards and just see the condition of those. But as far as the drip edge goes, check for any damage with the drip edge, because this is where you can run into some issues as far as like ice dams and things like that go, because if the water is not properly entering the gutter, it can go up underneath the drip edge and up underneath your shingles or even your decking, and that can cause the ice dams, and then you get leaks in your home, which I have personal experience with that. It went into my home. The ceiling in my kitchen actually collapsed just from ice dams. So you definitely want to look at drip edge. Drip edge is going to go a long way. Also, that ice and water shield, which we talked about, when we took that quick trip to Home Depot, and I showed you what that was all about. But that would go all along these edges also, and that's going to protect from the ice dams. So some things to note: older homes. If you're buying an older home with an older roof, there is a chance that they don't have ice and water shield on there. All newer homes, that's the code. Like I was talking about earlier, they are going to have ice and water shield, if they pulled permits and did it properly and we're installing it properly. Again, you never know. A lot of guys know how to throw on a roof. You get buddies at the bar to get together and, you get a roof on there, and who knows if it's the code or not. But, that's just one thing to keep in mind. Also, and the other thing I want to show you here is I know at the beginning I was also talking to you guys about 3-tab shingles. So just to refresh your memory, here's the 3-tab look. It looks like bricks and it's flat. This is the architectural look. You can see the overlap. And architectural, that is, what the code is now. These 3 tabs, out of code as far as putting them on your home. But one thing to notate, if you are looking at a home, if it does have a 3-tab shingle and the decking's in good shape, there haven't been leaks going on. If it's only one layer of roofing, if that's the only layer, as of codes right now, you can roof over that. So that saves you some money as far as, you're not having to have somebody strip your entire roof down. You can roof over. If it's only one layer, you can go up to 2 layers by code. But you cannot roof over on architectural. So you want to keep that in mind. So, if you're looking at a fixer-upper home and you're trying to save some money and you think, oh, this home is going to need a roof, and now that you've watched this whole video, thank you for watching, by the way. Well, it's not over yet. We still haven't even gone into the attic. But you can see, what to look for. And then, if the roof is worth, doing a roof over, that's something to consider also, because you can save a lot of money with that. The absolute best way to do it, I would say to strip it, check the wood, replace any wood as needed, and then put a brand new roof on. But, if the roof's in good shape, and it's 3-tab shingles, which is that flat look again, you can roof over it. So, but again, has to be one layer. So that can be the only layer up there. So, all right, why don't we, I think we've looked enough at the outside. That's half the battle. Why don't we look at the inside? Because the inside is super important, looking at the decking from the inside. You can tell almost as much as what's going on, by looking at the inside. So if you can peek in the attic, I'm not saying go crawl around. Don't do anything unsafe. Stick your phone up there. Zoom in. Take a few pictures, the flash. Even if there's no lighting, sometimes the flash is fine. Or if you have a nice flashlight, that's good too. Just get a few pictures, and we'll dive into now like what to look for in the attic, when you're doing the inspection at a home that you're taking a look at. All right, so when you look in the attic, one of the first things you're going to notice is if there's any black mold. It's going to stand out very well, and this is kind of common sense. I mean, I don't even think I really need to tell you this, but if you see black mold, that's obviously a really bad sign. That's definitely something that you're going to want a professional take a look at. As far as mediating the mold, or, you might need new decking. So depending on how severe it is, that's something you want to look at. I mean, a few spots here and there, you're probably okay, with just getting rid of the mold. But when it starts to take over the wood, there's a good chance you're going to need some redecking. So this is definitely one of the things you're going to want to look at. It'll stand out right away. And something else just to notate with the decking when you're looking at the decking, and this is probably just more for informational purposes, but there's different types of decking. So, older homes, you might see decking that looks like this. This is plank decking, and this is actually really good quality wood. And you can just see, it's just sheets of wood that were, put together for the roof. And then sometimes they even had space decking. So you would see there's actually even spaces between these planks. So some planks are going to be, tongue and groove, and they're going to fit very tight. But some are going to look like this, and you're going to see these spaces. So you might go in the attic, and you might see these huge spaces in between the decking, and you might be like, oh my goodness, how is this good for the roof? But, that's how they built the houses, back in the day. So they used all these plank deckings, and, it was really good quality wood. So you really don't want to touch any of that stuff if you don't have to, and there could have been some repairs done, you can peek and see. But the, more newer traditional route, is plywood. And there's two different types of plywood. You got the CDX and OSB. And, there's pros and cons to each one. And you'll see both up there. But, just keep in mind. So when you're looking at the decking, if you do see this, plank decking and the spacing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just an older home, and that's just how they made them. So, as long as that wood is good, every time a roof's put on, they just keep that wood. The other thing you're going to want to take a look at, is if there's any like warped wood, if it just looks like any signs of overheating. Sometimes, the structure of the home settles over time. So sometimes you might see some wavy decking, and really there's not a whole lot you can do about it if it's the structure of the home. But these are all things, for a home inspector to take a look at and a professional. It's just things for you to peek at. So don't necessarily panic if you see wood that is, wavy. And that goes on the outside too. So I didn't really get into pictures of that on the outside, but sometimes you drive up to home and you see a little bit of waves. But just keep in mind, if it's structural because the home settled, because it's an older home, there is a chance that they, there's not going to be a whole lot you can do with that. As far as the look of it. So, but that's something for a professional look at, just something I'm just mentioning here. Another area you want to take a look at is you want to look for cat eyes. So here's an example here of a cat eye. And when you see the nail protruding from the roof, and then you see a little black area around it, that could be a couple of things. So that's some moisture getting in. Look, when you see that, look at the tip of the nail. If the nail is rusty, then that's definitely showing you that moisture is getting in there. And typically how these form is you have the moisture is, coming in through the nail hole, and, asphalt shingles, they have tar in them, different things. So what's happening is, the tar, if it didn't hit the nailing strip right, the asphalt is actually coming in, and that's what's causing that discolor. So sometimes it's mold, and mildew, sometimes it's the tar. So you want to take a look at that. So if you see a lot of cat eyes, again, doesn't mean you need new decking, but it's just signs that moisture's, starting to get inside of your home. So that's the big difference here with the attic, is now we're looking at the next level of what's coming into your home. So you definitely want to, take note of these things. Again, if you can safely take a peek at the attic, you just want to have an idea of, what's going on if moisture is getting into your home. Another area here that you want to take a look at is, see all these nailing. I don't even know what this is. It is not any kind of nailing pattern. So most of your nails should be in a pattern, because all shingles have a nailing strip. There should be a straight line. So if you just see a bunch of nails like this, that's signs that the roof was not properly installed. Or somebody went up there and they just started patching an area and just nailing, a shingle down with a bunch of nails. I don't know what they did, but you shouldn't see areas like this. It should show a pattern. Obviously, if you had 2 layers up there, you're going to see a little bit, more action with the nails, because you have 2 different, patterns going on with 2 different sets of shingles. But by and large, you want to see a pattern when you're looking at the shingles. And then another thing to keep in mind is sometimes you have, energy saving companies will come out and they'll do blown in insulation. Or maybe you didn't have a lot of insulation in your home, or, the previous homeowner didn't have a lot of insulation, and they just sprayed all this spray and insulation. But this is something you want to take a look at, is where did it go? Because if it went into the eaves, that's something you want to take a look at too, because, let's take a look. Here's a quick look at a soffit vent from the outside, which, when we first started showing you the home I showed you did not have a soffit vent, but this is what a soffit vent would look like. And this is where the air comes into the attic, like we talked about. So the air needs to come into the attic to properly, ventilate your attic, and then it exits through the ridge, like we talked about. So if blown-in insulation covers, all of these soffit vents up, you start to see a lot of overheating, in the attic. And, when you see overheating, it can cause things like this, which is called ambering. So ambering is, if I wanted to really quickly get into it, it's kind of like the wood sweating. So when the wood gets really hot from overheating, it's almost like the sap is coming out of the wood, which is going to make the wood, more brittle, over time. And that's not what you want, on the structure of your home on the roof. So you definitely want to properly ventilate. So you want to look for signs of blown-in insulation. Could cause, issues as far as ventilation goes. And then here's again a look at the ridge vent. So you want to look at the ridge vent, from the inside, because is it one of those Cobra vents, which I showed you at the beginning, which is just like a Brillo type pad, which those get clogged very easily. So sometimes you can kind of see it. Sometimes it's tough in an attic. But you try to look, if you can, from the inside. You can kind of see if it's, and, here's what a ridge vent looks like, from the outside, just so you can get a visual. When it's being installed, they're actually cutting, into your roof, when they properly install it, which I know at first sounds crazy. Like, why do you want to cut a hole in my roof? But you want to properly ventilate this attic, because, if you let the heat, it has nowhere to go. It just sits up there. It's just going to bake your wood, and, it's just going to push back into your home, and it's just going to, the air conditioner in the summer, electricity and all that, is just going to be going up. So one thing I didn't mention yet was the, if you're going to buy a roof and it is older, you definitely, you want to count the number of facets on the roof, because that's going to determine a large part when you have to replace the roof, what the price is going to be. So you can't just go by the square footage of your home. If you just do that, think about it, your roof is not the exact square footage of your home. If you were to take your roof and flatten every facet out onto a flat line, that's how you're going to get the square footage of your roof. So, every little, facet, if you have a hip roof, or you have, a Gable style roof, or a gambrel, all the different styles that are out there. And then additions are put on, and I could go on and on and on and on and on about, the different styles of roofs, and, all the different dormers, and, every little facet, even coming off one little dormer, like look at this picture of a dormer. So that, that's going to be, additional facets. So, every time you have an additional facet, that's more cuts, right? So they're going to order more material. Obviously, it's more labor. It's going to be more cuts, more material, because every little facet, if you just had a simple up and over ranch style house, not a lot of cuts, but when you start to get into a complex roof, with a lot of different design features, if you're looking at one of those and you're going to need a roof, you want to factor that in, before you put the offer in on the house, depending on the market. There's definitely some areas that you could talk about, because a roof is just not a roof. Every single roof is different. So when you're negotiating, if the home you're looking at needs a new roof and it has a lot of facets and a lot of cuts and it's complex, and there's a lot of complex areas they might have to cut around, or, skylights and different things like that. All those are going to go into, the price of the new roof. So you want to have an idea of that, with your agent, because that's stuff that you can negotiate, because, by the time you get to a home inspector looking at the roof, by then you already got the offer in. So, you want to have an idea of like what a new roof's going to cost, and, without even having to go have an estimate done or anything like that. You can just kind of tell, A, inspect if you need the roof, how old is the roof, and then what's going on with the roof. But B, if you can kind of determine how big the roof is, and how complex it is, that's also going to go a long way in determining, you know, what the cost is going to be. So that's just some things to have in your back pocket when you're negotiating. Also, an important aspect to look at is, you know, I did talk earlier about, you know, finding out the age of the roof. Obviously, that's important, you know, when you are inquiring about a home. But if the roof is brand new, that's something you actually want to take a look at too. Because, you know, what happens is, you know, if you're buying a home that was a flip house, you know, a flipper bought it and flipped it, you know, most of the time, you know, they're just throwing on the cheapest materials possible, you know, just to try to get a quick return on their investment. So that's something you definitely would want to ask the inspector to check. You know, that's something you might not be able to see right away on your own, just by looking at the roof. But, you know, you can check a few ways. You know, you can have the home inspector check it out, kind of check the quality of materials the best that they can. Obviously, they're not going to tear the roof off and start to look at what the drip edge looks like underneath and ice and water shield and all that stuff. I mean, you could go to the town, you could pull, you know, take a look at the permits and just see, you know, who did the roof. You know, you can do different ways to research it. But not all shingles are created the same. You know, all the roofing materials, like we talked about at the beginning of the video, you know, it's just like buying a car or a TV. You know, there's some really great models, and then there's some really low-end models. So same thing with roofing. So, you know, when a flipper, if you buy a home that was flipped, I mean, like I was saying, a lot of times they're just throwing the cheapest materials possible, and that's not just for roofing. So, you know, that's something you want to keep in mind throughout the home. You know, you see it a lot in kitchens, and if you're looking for quality of kitchens, I actually have a video about, you know, quality of kitchens right here on the YouTube channel that you could check out and kind of look for things there. But that's a lot of times that's what you'll see. So, you know, brand new, I'm not saying it's a huge red flag where you shouldn't make the purchase of the home. It's just something to keep in mind that if they did use the cheapest materials, threw them up there and just hope for the best, you might have to do some maintenance, you know, sooner than you think. You might be thinking, oh, I don't have to worry about this roof for the next 20 years. That's just, you know, simply might not be the case even with a new roof. And another way you could actually look into this is you could talk to your agent. One thing we can do is, you know, we can go in the system and we can do a little research to see if the home you're looking at was a flipped house. Because, you know, we can go look at the previous listing, and the previous listing was like a year ago, and the house was in shambles. You know, the property was in shambles, and now everything's brand new. Good chance that, you know, the house was flipped. So it doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. Not all flippers are just throwing the cheapest product in there. But, I mean, just think about it. You know, it's common sense. They're trying to flip the home, spend as little as possible to get the highest, you know, return on their investment. So, you know, the best way for them to do that is to try to get the cheapest possible materials that they can in there, you know, without sacrificing crazy quality. They still want it to, you know, look good so it markets good. But how long are those materials going to last? So something to take a look at, something to keep in mind. You know, even if you have a brand new roof, you know, it could have been a cheap roof that was thrown on there. That's a wrap for this video. Roofing 101. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was long. You know, I mean, it could have been a lot longer. I really just covered the basics. So, you know, I'll probably do additional roofing videos, little smaller ones, just covering certain topics. But I wanted to also have a longer video that just incorporates, you know, everything. So, again, thanks for watching. As always, I'll put my number on the screen. If you have any questions, you know, anything at all about roofing, real estate, kitchens, you know, just give me a call, shoot me a text message. Well, happy to help you out. All right. Have a great day. Take care, and I'll see you at the next video.